Hello and welcome to The Last Word on Spurs. We hope you're keeping very, very safe and well. Thank you so much for joining us for 2 of 4 great shows we've got coming your way this week on Last Word on Spurs. Delighted to be joined alongside me by the co-host of our crazy train. Of course, it's Lee McQueen, who actually visited a crazy train himself. Lee, how are you, mate?
I can't believe it. I actually visited a crazy train show today. We took out our show. I've got 3 girls. For those of you who don't know, Millie and Lottie and Lois are twins. Lottie and Lois are twins. And we went to see Didcot Railway Station and their kind of museum over there. And it had these big trains. I was like, oh my God, this is like proper crazy train stuff. So we visited the crazy train. I threw a load of coal on these trains to make sure that we continue with a fantastic start to the season. And what better way to continue that tonight with 2 wonderful guests, Rick, from the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust. And I'm really looking forward to not only just meeting them. I think we followed each other for a long time, but actually chatting to them as well. And yeah, talking about trust stuff, but also talking about the mighty Spurs as well. So really looking forward to having both Rachel and Steve with us, Rick.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, most certainly. I mean, again, like I say, on Last One on Spurs over the course of the season, such has been the nature of so many games we had to cover, and we haven't always had the chance to kind of turn away and look at other stuff in relation to the football club. We had obviously an interview go out over the summer where we had the brilliant Sarah Band who joined us from the Tottenham Hotspur Foundation. And listen, it's been a while since we caught up with the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust, probably because there has been some internal changes there. So we're absolutely delighted that now there has been a little bit of dust settling. It's international break. It's time to find out what has been happening in the world of the THST, the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust. And who better to join us than the new Tottenham Hotspur Supporters co-chairs in the brilliant Rachel Martin and Steve Cavalier. Guys, I know there's some nerves in the air. Whoever wants to go first. Let's go to you, Rachel. I know you've been building up to it all day. Lovely to have you on Last One Spurs. Finally to make your debut. How are you, firstly?
Oh, thank you. I'm really well. Yes, I have been a bit nervous. I will be honest. It's lovely to meet you. Lovely to meet you for the first time, Lee. Although we've followed each other on Twitter. Lovely to see you again, Ricky. After our first, the time we met before was when Mourinho had just been appointed, and we were both being interviewed by Chris Slegg on the BBC. And you were very sweet to me, even though my views were the polar opposite of yours.
Do you remember what we said at the time, Rachel? Just to
I do.
Probably Rachel was right.
Well, I'd only just stopped sobbing after Pochettino had been sacked, and Ricky was very excited about a bright new future with a world-class manager.
And how many times have I said that on Last One of Spurs or over the course of the years where I've got to be excited about a manager such as nature? I know Pochettino was causing tears. I think Rachel was in tears when I saw her. And I was trying to, number one, comfort Rachel, but at the same time try and be excited about Mourinho, which at the time I was, but I felt awful for Rachel at the time. I mean, I saw Rachel trying to be excited, saying, we've got this wonderful stadium here, wonderful training ground. I don't think she could bring us to say a wonderful manager. She was still crying over Poch. It was
It was a bad fit for me.
ITV Gold for sure. Jordan, Rachel as well, new co-chair of the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust. Delighted to have Steve Cavalier join us. Steve, lovely to have you on Last One on Spurs to make your debut. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. I'm enjoying always a bit more. Normally, it's a more relaxing weekend during the international break, so you haven't got to worry about Spurs. But obviously, we've been focused on this. But now you've made me upset about Poch all over again by raising that. But although I must say I'm a massive fan of content, I do join in all the Antonio chants. I do feel a certain degree of disloyalty in the back of my mind. I almost hope Poch isn't watching, when that's going on, because you think of the great years we had with him. But no, very good to be on. Very good to be on when the team are doing well. I know we're going to talk about that later on, when we're all a lot of positivity around the club, and I'm very, very pleased to have the opportunity. Big fan of the show, always enjoy it, and as I say, it's a nice to have a platform for some of my completely ill-informed views about football as well. So I shall make the most of that.
Steve, lovely to have you on here. And like I say, again, it's just great for us to kind of break away from reviewing games, previewing games for a week, where we've got the opportunity to kind of dive in, because I know a lot has happened over the course of the last 4 or 5 months with regards to the trust. So we're really looking forward to kind of, understanding a little bit more as to how things are going on there. Lots of internal changes, which I'm sure you guys are going to update us on. So again, just a reminder, of course, if you're listening to us for the first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We are, of course, on Twitter at Last One on Spurs. We're on Facebook and Instagram too. Now, we did give a little bit of a brief announcement last week, but I'm hoping we can go a little bit further now because the game is really imminent on us. That we are delighted, of course, to be sponsored by the Beavertown Corner Pin, and that is the Beavertown bang opposite your south stand. Now, we are absolutely delighted to announce that, fingers crossed, the game going ahead, pending any more rail strikes, that we've got our first live show coming your way this Saturday evening your way for the Arsenal game at the Emirates. We'll be reviewing that game with you live at Beavertown, and like I say, we're looking forward to bringing that to you. One of many shows we've got lined up for you over the course of the season, and we're hoping at some point we can blend in you lovely lot as our audience moving forward for that. But just a reminder, at the moment there are still tickets available should you wish to maybe join us down at Beavertown on the day to watch the game for their home when away slot. And you can do that by going to www.beavertownbrewery.co.uk/pages/corner-pin. And there's lots of opinions and comments as to whether the game is going to be going ahead. As things stand at the moment, we've not been told otherwise. Hopefully that game will go ahead on Saturday, despite Arsenal once again trying to pull a runner, wherever we heard that for the first time on Last Word on Spurs. Although it is at the Emirates, so you can maybe argue with our record there. Maybe we're the best ones to avoid it, given that we want to continue this unbeaten start to the season, which I understand. Obviously, if we do avoid defeat to Arsenal, I think it will be our best ever unbeaten run in the Premier League. So Spurs still smashing the stats. I feel bad on taking Lee's blue book away from there for just a second. But listen, let's get into it, guys. As Geordie says there, that he'll be on the laser crush. They'll almost certainly be on the laser crush.
Don't worry about
Lee
that.
will be on the laser. I'm not sure by 6:30 whether Lee will be on the laser crush, depending on how that game has gone. You'll have to see on that one. But just for our viewers and listeners who maybe are unaware, to kind of put it into context matters about the THST, the board of the THST elected Steve Cavalier, Rachel Martin, who you can see on your screen, who are listening to on audio tonight, as the co-chairs, with Kunal Shah, secretary, until the Trust AGM in February 2023. And we're absolutely delighted that Rachel and Steve are joining us for this show, and who are making their debut. So I hope you give them a very, very warm welcome. Because again, like I say, I think we have to again acknowledge the point that for the Trust, it's a voluntary role. These are guys that absolutely love the club, adore the football club, and always want to help and go that extra mile to make everybody's experience even more pleasurable when going to Spurs. Now, they succeed long-standing co-chairs Katrina Law, Martin Cloak, who stepped down, but will continue to share their knowledge as members of the board until the next AGM. Now, again, we have to put on record here from Last Word on Spurs that we've been overwhelmed and have loved having Kat and Martin as part of this platform over the course of the last easily 4 to 5 years, beyond that probably, in which they came to us when we was at the Love Sport shows. They came down to see us personally. Of course, due to COVID, then we had the situation where we reverted, of course, to technology such as this. And they gave us so much information, so much of their time, hours and hours of time, giving their thoughts on Tottenham, giving obviously knowledge to a lot of supporters about where it comes to away days or ticketing inquiries, information. So again, on behalf of all of us here at Last Word on Spurs, we want to place on record our sincere thanks to Kat and Martin. They're always going to be massive, massive friends of the show. And I do hope, like I say, they come back on to review some games should they wish. But given the nature that hopefully they're having a bit more of a calmer time now as part of the Trust, they might want to steer away from Spurs at the moment for the time being. But we do very much look forward to having Kat and Martin back on the show very soon. I'm sure, Lee, before we open it up to Rachel and Steve, you're also going to probably echo those thoughts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like true, like Rachel and Steve, like a lot of us, right? Like a lot of viewers and listeners, true supporters of Spurs. We were just saying in the agreement before, wasn't we? I think I mentioned before about, you can't please everyone like all of the time, and there's a lot to do. And I think everybody needs to remember what Kat and Martin did for the Trust on behalf of us fans, and of course what Rachel and Steve are doing now as well. It is, as you just said, Rick, it's voluntary. So the reality of the situation is that we're all together to try and make this club as great as possible. And us fans, I think I said it on the last show, us fans also have a role to play in that, in terms of atmosphere and getting behind the team and that sort of stuff as well. And yeah, just want to give my thanks personally to Kat and Martin, and also my thanks to Steve and Rachel as well, because hopefully we're going to be seeing a lot more of you moving forward on the show, and not just chatting Trust stuff, like I said at the beginning, but also chatting Spurs, because that's what we're here, isn't it?
Yeah, first and foremost, it's about the football club, right? I mean, just to open it up to you, Rachel and Steve, I know you're going to probably have some words for Kat and Martin to start with. whoever you want to go with, whoever want to go first. Go, Steve. With something, you, Steve.
No, thank you. Well, I really do echo that. I mean, Kat and Martin have been absolute legends. What they've done, they've made the trust what it is. They are, just immense characters. Their force of personality, their knowledge, their expertise is absolutely second to none. They've been just fabulous. And what I've also realised, through working with them, but also through contact with others, is the esteem in which they're held across the football community, the football supporters community, is absolutely phenomenal. And we know, they're an impossible act to follow. We're not going to try and be the next Cat and Martin. We couldn't possibly do that. I mean, we are newer to the game, and we're trying to learn from them and take in their invaluable expertise and knowledge and skills and the links they built up over the years. But I mean, I think all Spurs fans owe a huge, huge debt of gratitude to Cat and Martin for the fantastic work they've done. And as you say, I hope they can now, once they've moved on from the board, at the moment they're still playing a very, very valuable role, can just enjoy watching Spurs without the stresses and strains of the trust responsibilities as well. And that, just a big, big shout out to both of them.
Not sure, Steve, anyone can watch Spurs and enjoy it.
No, that's a fair point, actually. I realised I got carried away with myself there,
Again, I would say we're going to come on to all things Spurs most certainly shortly. I'm sure, Rachel, you're going to want to come and echo those thoughts as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I agree with everything that you've all said. But also, I feel personally, that I've been really sort of encouraged in my 5 years on the board by Cat and Martin. They've always sort of looked to include people, to bring out their strengths, to give us opportunities to support the work of the trust and to learn about the incredible amount of stuff that goes on in the background. How they manage to do those roles and have effective, impressive careers and family life and everything else, I do not know, because you probably gather both of us are retired, and I mind you are busier when you're retired. I'll just an advance warning. I don't know how they did it. I really don't. And we're just full of admiration and gratitude.
No, for sure. Absolutely brilliant. Well, actually, Rachel, sticking with you, there is probably only one real place to start here. How have you found your first couple of months as being the co-chairs of THST? How have you found that, Rachel, firstly to you, and then we'll come over to Steve afterwards?
Well, I mean, it was never something that I ever imagined would happen. And it was a complete surprise. I was really pleased to do it. I used to be a head teacher, so there are actually quite a lot of skills that I think are compatible. But my goodness, the first weekend after we'd had our meeting and we'd been elected, I went to the FSA AGM, the Football Supporters Association AGM. So I was sort of then with Cat and Martin, but sort of getting this absolute avalanche of all the things that are going on and that I would need to get up to scratch on and to understand how to do. I was also getting to meet all the people from the other Spurs official organisations, such as Spurs Ability, Proud Lily Whites, Spurs Reach, etc., food banks, but also all the trust leaders from the other clubs, because we're all rivals on the pitch, but actually off the pitch, there are loads of things that we have to work together on. So, we'd never have had the return of safe standing or the cap on away ticket pricing and things like that if we weren't all working together. No one club would make those things happen. Yeah. So, an enormous amount of sort of getting used to everything that's going on outside, but then also just trying to get on top of the massive amounts of work that Cat and Martin were doing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis and trying to learn all the routines and feeling like I'm getting there, except some of the tech that Cat knows how to do. And it's just, whew. So that's a big learning curve still for me, definitely.
Oh, brilliant stuff. And what about for yourself, Steve, as well? How have you found the first couple of months?
I would echo that. I mean, it is a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge. Well, as Rachel said, neither of us were expecting to take this on, and as far as we were concerned, we've been very happy for Cat and Martin to carry on forever. I think,
absolutely.
And we're not going to try, as I say, to reproduce what Cat and Martin have done. And we're picking people's brains. We're getting knowledge from other people. We're listening to people, listening to what the fans are saying as well. We get a lot of emails and other comments and so forth, and we do try and deal with that and take that on board and learn from that. And of course, as Rachel said, there's always something going on. I mean, it was the closed season initially, but you've all still got stuff around ticketing and other issues that are concerning people and match times. And I know we're coming on to talk in more detail about those. And again, we take from the expertise of our colleagues, and we've got a very strong and experienced board with people with a range of backgrounds and expertise and knowledge and a range of interests as well, which is great. And we're the ones who are on the podcast tonight, but they all make a massive contribution as well, and we work together as a team as best we can, and we want to set clear objectives for where we're going with that. And then there's a challenge, of course, of dealing with the club on a regular basis, which it has its challenges, as you can imagine. Now, but I think the other thing, as Rachel says, we do bring our own perspectives and expertise to this. I was a lawyer and I was a trade unionist, and both of those have proved to be of some assistance already in some of the discussions we've been having with the club, particularly around the fan-led review. But what we all bring, and I think we've said it in relation to Cat and Martin, it's true of other colleagues on the board as well, is an absolute passion and commitment for Spurs, for Tottenham Hotspur, but also for Spurs fans, and trying to, in the best way we can, represent the views of Spurs fans and their concerns, and make sure that their experience of being Spurs supporters is the best it can possibly be. And that's what drives us. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. And I just think, sorry, Vicky, just to finish off on there, I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I would see from an outsider looking in, is that it's not just one dynamic or one set of individuals that you have to think about. You have to think about such a wide range of individuals that make up what is obviously Spurs fans. So that becomes a challenge in itself. Actually, can you put yourselves in Lee's shoes, or can you put yourself in Rachel's shoes? Can you put yourself in Carl's shoes or Georgie's shoes or whatever? And that's the bit that becomes what's good. What I want is probably something different to, I don't know, what Adrian wants, and therefore how do we make sure that we get the right balance, for want of a better expression.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, guys. I mean, I think Steve, you picked up on it there, and forgive me, it's not part of the script, but I just had to kind of cling on to a little bit of what you said there. You said that for you, Cat and Martin did it in their way, and obviously you and Rachel are going to take it maybe slightly a different direction. Do you think it'll become apparent to the outside, or is that just more internally? Just intrigued to know from your end.
No, I mean, we're not seeking a change of direction at all. I was meaning more that we're different people with different personalities and a different approach. But we'll be working collectively with our colleagues on the board, which includes Cat and Martin. And we, and there's no change in direction. We're very proud of what the trust has achieved and the approach it takes, and we see ourselves as custodians of that, really, and taking that forward, but also taking on board the views of others. And you've got to respond to the circumstances you're in. I mean, we're in, and we're coming on to this. I know we're rather jumping ahead. There's a different mood around the club than there was, say, a year ago. We're in different set of circumstances. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be critical of the club in certain things and take issue with them. And we'll come on, I know, to some of those issues as we go through it. But we're probably in a different dynamic at the moment than we were a year ago. And let's hope we're not going to be back into a situation where we were a year ago. And I think you've got to be reflective of that. But then there are, the other thing I know we're going to talk about too, is we are in the midst of a massive cost of living crisis, which is affecting everybody, including all Spurs fans, where people are feeling the squeeze when you come to talk about ticket prices and transport costs and all the sorts of issues we're going to come across. And I think we've got to be focused on that as well. But no, absolutely no change in direction or change in approach. It's just a change of people and a change of personalities, I guess, but also very much working as a team. That's what we intend to do.
Okay, I appreciate it, Steve. Thanks for the clarity on that. Listen, guys, already lots of well wishes for you. Hopefully they stay that way, fingers crossed, and nothing changes. Although I have to remind you, on Last Word on Spurs, we find it impossible to please everybody. Although I must say we love absolutely every single one of you that watches and listens to us. Don't think we don't. We absolutely do. Guys, one of the first things that we saw you kind of take control of and you was involved in was the 8th annual survey, which showed Spurs fans revealing very strong backing once again for formal fan input at club board level. Plus, there were concerns of broadcasting issues and ticketing prices. And what we'll just at this moment is that I'm conscious that we've got quite a number of people watching at the moment. They've got lots of questions that are coming in. So, guys, what we'll do is we'll take questions based on the relevant areas that we're touching upon. And again, at the end, we'll open the floor if Rachel and Steve don't mind to asking any final questions. But we know we've got some that's actually come in pre-show as well, so we'll try and bed them in to each segment that we're talking about. But essentially, guys, there was quite a big response to that survey in general. Probably first thing to touch upon, guys, is whoever wants to go first. What did you make overall of the results that came on the back of that 8th annual survey?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, again, credit to Kat in particular for leading on the survey itself. No, we were pleased. It was a good response. It was a good level of response, and and largely positive. And we're coming on to the details of that, so I won't anticipate that. But we were pleased with the level of response, level of engagement. There was quite a clear, although it's a Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust survey, it's not confined just to THST members. So other Spurs fans participated as well, and there was quite a sort of correspondence of views, if you like, between the views of THST members and the views of other Spurs fans. And, you know, look, the big issues you would expect: ticketing, pricing, timing of matches, broadcaster matches, you know, travel, match day experience, and, you know, overall, how is the club being run? What's the direction of the club? What's the strategy of the club? Are we happy with the future of the club? And I know we're going to touch on all of those issues as we go through. But no, and I would encourage everybody to participate in the survey. It's a very big survey. It statistically comes up with some really good stuff, and it's really interesting. It's an interesting read, and you can see the report of it on our website and in our newsletters as well.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. I mean, you mentioned, Steve, in that, and generally the mood of the fans, and generally there's been improvements on the pitch as well. I think we can all, hopefully, we can all smile about that. So much more positive set of results year on year in Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust annual fan survey that we just touched upon. But there's still some vital warning signs over tickets and pricing. This is probably going to be the most questions that you've probably already got in directly, and then we get a lot of questions in around tickets and pricing. The survey now in its 8th year is the large independent barometer of fan opinion at Spurs, as you just touched upon, with over 6,000 responses, providing a rich crop of data this particular year. The survey is open to all Spurs fans, regardless of geographical location, trust, or club membership status as well. So, you know, next time around, if you haven't got involved this time, definitely get involved, as Steve just said. But those who participated in this survey, 35% were trust members, and 35% were general admission season ticket holders, and 73% were based in the UK. So, you know, that seems to me quite a healthy balance between, you know, trust members and general admission season ticket holders, that type of thing. Was you happy, Rachel, with the overall amount of responses that you've received in that survey?
Yeah, I mean, it's the second highest that we've ever received, and I think you can probably guess which year we had the biggest response. You know, clearly last year with the European Super League debacle, we had about 8,000, I think it was, to that one. But 6,000 is a really good sample, and I think it's so important to have that, because we all know that, you know, anything to do with Spurs, anything to do with football, there's going to be a lot of views. But we need to know what are people thinking? How many people do feel that this is a priority, this is strong, because this is going to inform the work that we do over the coming year. It's an independent survey, so it's not coming from the club, it's not loaded, it's just, you know, we just want to know. But it also gives us really valuable information to give back to the club. I mean, just as an example, 97% renewed their season ticket. Now, for, you know, this is the sort of area where, however unhappy we might be with the prices or moving that window, do you remember they moved the window a month back? So we didn't know if we got Champions League football. We didn't know, you know, we lost a pay window and everything. And the club could say, well, you know, clearly it wasn't a problem because everyone renewed. Well, 64% of people said it was a problem, but you can't say, okay, I hate it, I can't afford it really, but so I'm going to go and get one at Bournemouth instead. You know, we're Spurs fans, we're hooked in. So, but it's really important to get that sort of data so that we can keep fighting the corner of Spurs fans and say, you know, it's not okay.
It's a great point, Rachel, because again, a lot of our viewers and listeners will be screaming either at the screen or at their devices saying the same thing. Like, but we're hooked in. We love the club, and actually the board know that. The club knows that we're hooked in. We're not just going to, like you say, oh yeah, let's just go and support Bournemouth or Portsmouth or whatever. It's impossible to do that. So actually being able to show that data is important to say, look, over 2/3 of the people that renewed are unhappy with that. I remember actually at the time thinking we've lost a payday. I think that was one of the key things, like for personally for me and for a lot of the people that I go with. It's like, well, hang on, this is coming before an extra payday that we would have normally had, and that is tough. But what do you do? Because if you don't renew, the club know that they've got whatever 10, 15, 20,000 people on the waiting list, and you're going to lose your ticket, and that's a problem, isn't it?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, and there are lots of other things where we need that data. We need to have the numbers to be able to back up our arguments, and that's why we spend a lot of time formulating the questions. We do, we are sort of wondering about whether we need to do 2 a year, shorter ones, focused on different things, because they are quite long, but we really do value every response and we do use it. So, please keep them coming.
Absolutely. Just on comments, questions that are coming in, just one we're going to share here just for you, Rachel and Steve, that's coming from Adrian Soroka, long-term viewer, listening to the show. Adrian, thanks for your point. He says, Rachel, Steve, can you please inquire with the club about placing bench seats on all level inside the stadium where possible for elderly and disabled supporters who cannot stand for long periods? So just sharing that one with you guys, just so that's on your radar.
That is actually something I've raised because I do the catering meetings, and I have raised it on more than one occasion. I think there's a lot of things to do with concessionary prices as well, about people who are older, that they should have that everybody should be able to have the concessionary rates, not just based on where you are in the stadium. But the response I always get back is that it's about numbers and the free flow of people in the concourses, and that it's a health and safety issue, that it's all been measured out, so that for those numbers you need to have this amount of space, and that if you have bench seating, it makes it not fair, not safe rather, but also that they wouldn't just be used by people who needed them. They'd be used by anybody, and then people would be arguing. I'd like. I think it's something we can keep pushing on personally, because even the steps in the marketplace are really hard to sit on, other than the front one, if you aren't completely stable on your feet.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. We've got another, I think, comment in from Carl, who says that my son is registered partially sighted, so has access membership. However, area we can't get tickets from means he's able to see the screens when the ball is up the other end, still trying to find the best view. I mean, obviously that's a really tricky one there in terms of obviously the point Carl makes, and again, really, really difficult. Generally on that. I don't know if Rachel, Steve, you have a view on that at all with regards to that particular point?
I mean, to me, that feels like one where we have an email account, and I'd love Carl to get in touch with us on our email account, so that we could put him in touch with the supporter liaison officer, and we would stay with him during that process and see what can be done, because that doesn't sound acceptable.
Okay, I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much as always.
There was one other as well, just on from a disabled access perspective. I can't remember the individual's name, but he mentioned that he's got 2 daughters, but he can only take one daughter because he's in a wheelchair. So is there something around access where he could actually?
Carl Bingham there.
Carl, two Carls. So Carl, So is there something, Rachel or Steve, you could shed on light to help Carl in that situation?
I mean, I think, again, with this one, and probably the last one as well, we've got a really good relationship with Dee and everyone at Spurs Ability, and we would like to put them in touch with each other, because they've got that area of expertise. And, again, that they need to work with Spurs Ability, work really hard with the club to find solutions for these particular sort of situations. So we can put them in touch if they email us.
Brilliant.
Okay, fantastic. And
what's the email address, Rachel, that they can get involved with?
Yeah, so it's info@thstofficial.com.
Superb. And that will also be in the YouTube element of our show where it comes to the description and our audio, so our listeners and viewers can easily find that. We've got one more question, guys, for this area, if you don't mind, or this segment of the show. Ron Redworth says, I've had a lot of problems with the new e-ticketing system on my smartphone. Is there any chance they're going to simplify it? I will only go now if I can get a paper ticket. Thoughts on that, guys? Oh, let's unmute Steve. Sorry, Steve. Let's bring you in. Sorry, Steve.
I mean, I know that there were particular problems, weren't there, for people with Android phones at the start of the season. We did get in touch with the club about that. We'd had a lot of queries about that. I don't know whether that's an ongoing problem or whether there are particular issues. I've been, even given my technical inability, I've managed to get mine to work okay. But I think the general direction of travel is more electronic ticketing rather than paper ticketing. So I suspect we won't necessarily go back down that route, although, of course, there were paper tickets effectively, or printable tickets for the extra tickets that were bought for Champions League games. But we'll certainly raise that one and keep an eye on it.
That's fantastic, Steve. Thank you so much, guys. Well, like I say, what we are going to do is we are just going to go for our first break of the show for our listeners and audio. For our watching audience here, thank you so much, as always, for all of your questions, all of your lovely comments already. I know Rachel and Steve making a nice impressionable view, and thank you so much again for your time. We're joined by, of course, Lee McQueen back on Last Word on Spurs. Delighted to have him back alongside me, and we've got the wonderful Rachel and Steve, the new co-chairs of the THST. It might not feel as new as probably what it does do now again, because first time they're on Last Word on Spurs, being put through mastermind. So please forgive us, guys. I want to say there's less questions to come, but I probably would be lying. So as we mean to go on, Steve, I'm going to carry on with you if you don't mind. So, I mean, last year's results, which you touched upon, they made, obviously, for some difficult reading, probably the boards, especially in terms of ENIC, and that was in the wake of the European Super League debacle and the poor showing on the pitch. Now, there does seem to be more promising outing this time, around 59% of all the respondents judging their stewardship of the club to have improved over the 2021-22 season, where we've seen a significant swing from the 75% who considered it to have declined in 2020 to 2021. There's still obviously, of course, room for improvement on confidence and in their long-term strategy of the club and the transfer policy. However, significantly, an overwhelming 91% of all correspondents or respondents supported the principle of clubs qualifying for competition solely on sporting merit, and just 3% making it clear that they would like ENIC to set up now. So, I mean, to be fair, THFC have taken, I think, criticism massively on from supporters when it comes to, not maybe representing fan feeling on the ownership. But I think, as you kind of have put in one of your recent statements, that it's best summed up by, the fact that with ENIC, they do a great job with the business side, but they'd be nice to have more focus on the footballing side. And that was agreed by 70% of all respondents and by 73% of Trust members. Now, given the fact that the club have made an impressive start to the season in terms of results, again, I know there's that area of style of football, which I'm sure we'll come into a bit later on, but do you feel that this particular judgment, Steve, it's always really based on what's happening on the field rather than off it? What's your view in general, Steve, when it comes to that point? I think to an extent, yes. I mean, first of all, let's not forget, the European Super League was an absolute disgrace. And that was the main driver, I think, behind last year's results. And that anger, righteous anger, was definitely there. And I think that even if we'd had a good season last season, that would still have been the case. So it's not the results on the pitch, I think, do have a big impact. And we were discussing, weren't we, before we came on air, that look, I was in Lisbon and feeling pretty miserable and replaying the vision of that corner going in and the header going in, and I shouldn't even raise it again. I'm distressing myself. But and then the first half against Leicester, if the second half against Leicester had been against like the first half, I suspect we'd all be in a very different mood and we'd be feeling rather different about things. Now, I don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that one result, it might ruin not just your evening or your weekend, but your whole week. But it doesn't necessarily affect people filling in a survey. It's more to do with the overall feeling, I think. And obviously, particularly at the end of last season, results are much, much better. But I think it's not just
individual results, is it? It's a sense of, are the club going in the right direction? And I think, the appointment of Antonio Conte, the backing that appears now to be given to Antonio Conte, and this survey was done before the announcement of the further 150 million injection into the club. So there's a much greater positivity that there is a sense of purpose. I mean, it looked to be not just poor results, but what was the strategy? What was the sense of direction when Mourinho was sacked, and then when Ryan Mason was the caretaker manager, then we couldn't get a manager for months, and then no one really seemed to think that that Nuno was who was wanted or required, and there was that sense of drift. I think there's much more sense now of a clarity of purpose, and that is then reflected, I think, in the results. So it's not just that people are saying, "I'm pleased we won last week," but they say, "Right, okay, actually, I can see now there does seem to be a sense of purpose to where the club are going," and that is then reflected. But as we said before. I mean, you made absolutely the right point, Rachel, that, Spurs have got a monopoly on being Spurs. So if you're a Spurs fan, you've got no choice but to be a Spurs fan and to be going to Spurs or watching Spurs, whoever is owning the club. And you can't just switch your allegiance in that way. And so even if people are voting with their feet, if you like, by going to games and paying the ticket prices, that doesn't mean that the club should reflect on some of the concerns that there are, particularly in the current economic situation, and also reflect on what is best for the club and for fans to have that real sense of unity and purpose, that we're all in it together, if you like, to support Spurs. And it's not just a question of taking advantage of the fact that Spurs fans will go to every game that they can. And that's part of what we're trying to reflect. But just on the final point you made about ENIC, no, there will always be people who think ENIC out, but as you say, it's a very, very small proportion. And we, I think we've always said, and we said this around the European Super League stuff, it's all very well saying ENIC out. Well, who do you think you're going to get in? And if you look at the ownership of other clubs and their human rights records and their financial records and some of the other problems, there's not necessarily some magic solution out there. And you've got to look at what is being achieved overall. And we will continue to be questioning of the club and challenging of the club, because we all want the best for the club. We want the club to succeed and have a clear plan and a clear strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo most of what you said there. I mean, just to add before I come back over to Rachel, if I may, when you talk about the direction of where we're going, like where were we going during them times that you just mentioned? We weren't going nowhere.
No bloody where. That's where we're going nowhere. Yeah. None
of the fans, all the fans wanted to know is whether or not you want to call it a project. I know some people hate the word project, but we wanted to know where we're going. As a leader in a football club, as a leader in business, and a leader in whatever you do, you need to take the people with you. You need to say, this is where we're going. Who's with me? Who's coming on the crazy train with us? Let's go. And we just didn't. We wasn't having that. We just didn't have that at all. Now with Paratici coming in, a complete revamp of his backroom staff. With Antonio Conte, I mean, if anybody's going to drive a different way of making decisions in the club, it's going to be Antonio Conte, or we all know what happens, and hopefully it won't happen. I think it won't, by the way. But, so the fact is now where we're going is we have got a plan. We know where we're going. We know what we want to do. You mentioned about 150 million injection, and there's still a sense with me as well. Even if people will call me a happy clapper and a Levy lover or whatever, but I still think that we were too short in the summer. I still think that there's always been a sense with this current board that we're always just behind where we need to be, and we're never kind of in front of where we needed to be. That's just my personal opinion, and I just think that under Pochettino, we talked about Pochettino obviously at the beginning, but under Pochettino, it felt like on the pitch we were getting ahead of where we needed to be, and the infrastructure wasn't caught up. Now the infrastructure's caught up, and we've been 18 months, 2 years behind the curve on the pitch. But now, as we sit here talking, it feels like that we are on something. We have got a plan. We've got a fantastic manager, all the facilities, all the infrastructure to go and do the business. And actually, if we don't do the business, we are where do we go from here? So the plan that we've got to this point, I'm not optimist, right? So things happen for a reason. I think that we're a cycle behind Liverpool. Liverpool had their cycle. You talk about owners, Steve, Gillette and Hicks. All of the stuff. Go and speak to any Liverpool fan about what it was like under their ownership and so on and so on. Manchester United fans with the Glazers, go and have a conversation. And they've just taken 40 million dividends out when they're still in debt by 600 million. So there's always something different. But I think for us Spurs fans, it comes back down to, Paul made the point there, we haven't won an FA Cup. It's actually since 1991, but anyway. But we haven't won a cup and since 1991 in terms of the FA Cup and our last trophy. It is a massive issue for sure. That's the bit that we need to put right. Do you agree?
Oh God, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we want to win trophies. We want to win trophies. I mean, 1991 is. I remember that. Being there, it's just like a ridiculous length of time. My eldest son is nearly 32. And that he was just over one when we won the cup. And my younger son is 30 in a couple of weeks. He's never been alive when we won the cup. I mean, fortunately, they were both there for the League Cup victories in '99 and 2008. But that's just like half a lifetime ago for them. And I mean, obviously, there have been significant improvements, finishing in the top four fairly regularly, being in the Champions League by qualifying for it, not by some European Super League, and participating is great. And we've had some fantastic experiences, and being in Amsterdam for that win, but then we didn't win the final. I think it would have been winning the Champions League would have been absolutely transformative. Probably for everybody. And I think Poch said if we won the Champions League, he would retire. I think we all thought we might retire as Spurs.
Yeah, I agree. What were we going to do after we win that? What was he going to do?
As my son said, they can do what they like if they win the trophy. But we didn't. It was a great achievement, but it wasn't winning a trophy. And I'm sure that there's people in the club must desperately, players must definitely. I'm ignoring that comment. It's true of the players. I mean, look at someone like Harry Kane. I'd like to think that Harry Kane does want to be a Spurs player and wants to be a successful Spurs player and wants to win trophies at Spurs. Yeah. Now, the good thing now is I think the players can see that is not just a possibility, but it should be there under Antonio Conte, and they should be here and winning trophies, and they need that belief, probably rather more belief than I'm not perhaps as optimistic as Lee, rather more belief than I tend to have perhaps at a game. But I mean, that we should be winning trophies, and the team is there to win trophies, and the infrastructure now is there to win them as well.
Yeah. I think for me also, it's absolutely that we've got the infrastructure in, and we have had to cope with quite an extraordinary set of circumstances, with coronavirus and everything. That the club's plan obviously got derailed at that point, and there was nothing more irritating than getting all the things about concerts and rugby matches and all of this sort of stuff. We don't care when we weren't seeing any benefit from it, but now that we are, then I think it's really great that there are all these events on, and I find it very encouraging that they are prepared to change the way they operate. This window was like no other in that we got everyone in early. I agree with you, Lee. We needed a Christian Eriksen, or somebody that we didn't get everybody we needed, but we did get them in early. We never do that. We always sort of wait for the bargain bucket at the end and have a mad scurry round and end up with who was that? Saha from Everton, and all that kind of stuff. It's very different. I think Levy is handing over to people who know what they're doing. Paratici, and obviously Conte is in a different league, really, isn't he? And we are backing him, so I'm optimistic.
Yeah,
no, definitely agree. Actually, staying with you, Rachel, if I can. The Trust held its Q3 board meeting on the evening of Thursday, the 14th of July. We know from reading your statement on the THST, you had a regular roundup of finance and membership. Campaigns, communications followed as well, along with an agreement of a plan to transition major work streams from outgoing board members to remaining members on the THST board. The meeting concluded after a mammoth 3 hours. Blimey, imagine if I was there, it would have been like 4 hours. Can't stop me talking. But it was on Zoom as well. So much ground covered and roadmap for the coming months firmly in place. So really, really positive Q3 board meeting. Q4 board meeting is scheduled for the 18th of October. So what's that? 3 weeks away now,
Yeah.
2.5 weeks. That's going to be in person. So that's going to be fantastic over at Cannon Street. Rachel, are you be able to kind of let us know how your relationship with the club is now, given how strained it was at one point with obviously the trust calling for the board to resign over the ESL debacle, as we touched upon earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've always wanted to be in the room, round the table, talking with the club. And we used to have regular meetings with the full board, with Daniel Levy, with quite a few members of our board there. But really, when you go to those meetings and you're asking them absolutely straight questions about rumours of a breakaway league, is there any truth to them? And you're being told no, there isn't, and you're basically being told untruths, it makes it pointless going to these things. And yes, relations were very, very tough after we called for the board's resignation. We had a huge member mandate on that. That isn't where we want to be, and we've never wanted to be in that situation. But the full board and the membership were, absolutely behind that. All the time since then, we've still been working with the club on lots and lots of live issues. So particularly ticketing, safeguarding, catering, travel, safety of fans as they're traveling abroad, working with the police, stewarding, all sorts of things. We've still been having those work streams with the club. So there has been, an ongoing working relationship. But yeah, it's been very different at the sort of the top level, as it were. Steve and I have met with Daniel Levy and Donna Cullen, and we've been having quite a few meetings with Levi Harris, the supporter liaison officer, as well as others such as Dean Smith, who's head of security at the stadium. We've met with the catering teams. We've done a lot. We're working together. We think that things are improving. We've also been working in conjunction with the other official Spurs groups, Spurs Reach, Spurs Ability and Proud Lily Whites, on fan engagement. And we think we're probably a couple of weeks away from being able to really give you detail on where that's heading. And if you'll have us back at some point, we'd love to tell you about that. More about that, but yeah, Steve will talk more about this. But we fed into the fan-led review. We are encouraged by the direction it's going on. We're not there yet, but we're getting very, very close. So yeah, we think, with some provisos that things are becoming more workable and a better relationship. Yeah.
Just on the ESL, Rachel, thank you for that. And this is a little bit off script, so forgive me. But I'm just interested in yours and Steve's view. It's more of a kind of, I suppose, an emotive answer rather than maybe factual. But what's your feeling? Why we went into that? Is it because we kind of had no choice as a football club? Because actually, of course we had choice, but actually we would have been left so far behind not going into it. Is that why the club said we kind of have to go into it? And that's one of the key reasons for me personally where they got that wrong, because football isn't just about that. It should be about relegation and promotion and the jeopardy and all of them things. And that's the bit for me personally that they got wrong. But you feel, it felt like it was that week running up to the League Cup final. We had Jose Mourinho 6 days before Cup final. If there's anyone, like Jose was a nightmare, right? I get it. But if there's anyone you want for a one-off Cup final game in charge of a football club, it's probably Jose Mourinho. Now, I know it was toxic beforehand and people will come on and say, oh, Lee, you're talking rubbish. Did you see the results, etc.? but to sack him 6 days before the cup final and then announce the ESL situation was going on, just felt all of that was connected. And it was almost like, for us fans, it was almost like the club was going, well, it don't really matter who our manager is because we're in the ESL now. And it doesn't really matter because we've got the 350 million dropping down. So is that, having spoke to the club and being part of it, did you feel that it was kind of almost like, if we don't go in for this, we're going to be so far left behind that we're never going to be the kind of the super club that we want to be?
I'll bring Steve.
Oh, yeah, bring Stephen. Yeah, sorry, it's a long question. It's totally off script. Sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, two aspects to it, I think. I mean, I think I'm right, and Rachel will correct me if I'm wrong, that one of the things that Daniel Levy actually said was the club felt it had to be involved because otherwise it would be left behind with the project that was going on. Now, I'm not saying that I accept that necessarily, but it was certainly that was the club's position. I think my view would be, well, look, hang on, if you're involved in those discussions over a long period of time, and other British English clubs are involved in them as well, who then crumbled very quickly as soon as there was any people got wind of it, then surely there should have been a realization that this was simply the wrong thing to do. And there must be people who are, you don't get carried away by some sort of collective, stampede, that you actually have time to reflect and say, well, no, actually, no, we're powerful enough as Tottenham to be saying to the other English clubs and to the other clubs across Europe, bear in mind, we've been in the Champions League final very recently, well, no, this isn't the right way to go about it, because it is not about the integrity of football and qualifying for games, qualifying for tournaments, and that's what the excitement is for fans. I mean, I think there's digressing slightly. There are big issues which have been rather masked in this about the changes there are going to be to the Champions League, to this ridiculous new format, which I don't think anyone is particularly keen on. And then on the other point, it might be better, but I'm not sure I agree that it. Anyway, I agree with you. It ain't much better. I agree with you from the comment on screen. But the other point is, I did think the whole stuff around. I wasn't a fan of Mourinho and how the team were playing and the results we were getting. But it did strike me. If you were going to sack him on a Monday, I'd sack him on the Monday after a cup final rather than the Monday before. And it rather felt that it happened. It almost that, because a lot of Spurs fans weren't happy under Jose Mourinho, would sacking him on a Monday when the European Super League stuff was rumbling on distract people from the European Super League? I don't know. And that then all fell apart very quickly within a couple of days. So it was not I don't think it was an episode. Either of those were episodes which reflected well on the club, and you would hope that they have reflected on that since. Both in relation to the Super League and relation to, we want tournaments where clubs qualify on merit. And actually, I also think, back to this point about the format of the Champions League, one of the great things when you're in the Champions League is looking forward to the draw and which teams you're going to get in the group. Mm. So if you're going to be in a league of, 36 teams, or you're going to play 10 games, which, and you can see similar things are happening in cricket and other sports as well. It's that sort of Americanization of some of it and removing the jeopardy and the chance, and that is a big part of football, certainly as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, completely. And I also felt that at the time we were playing so badly. Did we really want to be playing, Barcelona and Real Madrid, Bayern Munich every week and getting slaughtered? Actually, yeah. No. Well, I'd rather wait until we're ready.
Yeah, and we're about. Obviously, spoiler alert: we have actually seen the script. We are about to get on to talk about Champions League ticketing and attendances. But the fact of the matter is, people will come and watch Premier League games, even against teams in the Premier League who may not be regarded as so attractive. But if you're playing European teams regularly of varying degrees of interest and ability and one thing or another in a tournament without real jeopardy and no one's entirely clear what is riding on the fixture, people won't turn up. And I think this is what clubs need to realise, that they actually, they are in danger of overdoing it in a way that people think, well, I'm not going to be particularly bothered to come out on a Tuesday or a Wednesday night to watch this particular fixture against a club which is mildly interesting, but it's not like a really big name like Real Madrid or Barcelona. And, the clubs are going to find people aren't turning up. And that's not just applying that to Tottenham. It'll be true for for other clubs as well.
It starts to dilute the fixtures between Real Madrid and Barcelona anyway, because once you've done that for the next 5-6 seasons on the trot, you're like, oh, right, it's just, we're playing Real Madrid again. Whereas actually now, I mean, one of the biggest, there's a few reasons, but I won't go into it now, but one of the biggest memories I've got in recent times in Champions League is the 1-1 draw at the Bernabeu, which was absolutely incredible. Like we were there, and couldn't believe Harry Winks. Fair play to him; he was brilliant that day. I'd be loving that. But also, of course, the return fixture at Wembley when we annihilated them. And
brilliant.
That is
Delhi in that game,
Dele Alli was just incredible that game, wasn't he? And obviously Ericsson put in the third. And you look at that and you just think that they are the Knights. This is what, as a fan, for me personally, I look at them Knights. I look at Arsenal. I look at the Arsenal coming up this weekend, and these are the games that we want to be in. Like this game on the weekend is to go top of the league, to beat our new London rivals at their gaff that we haven't beaten them since 2010, and to go top of the league. We should be loving this. This is what we should be up for. Do you know what I mean? So, and then as soon as they become, you've been battered by Real Madrid for the last 10 seasons, like, i.e., we never win at the Emirates, for example, you'll be dreading it. You'll be dreading the Real Madrid game. And that's the bit that you don't dread playing Real Madrid. If we got Real Madrid in the round of 16 in the Champions League, everyone will be loving it. But if you play 5, 6, 7 years on the trot in the ESL, you'll be dreading it because they'll probably be turning you over each week.
Fair point. Very fair point.
Yeah, I've actually got some questions to ask you guys, but I want to save it towards the end, just in terms of obviously the meeting with the board, just conscious of time. So I think, Steve, this next question's to you. And I said, spoiler alert, it's ticketing time. So the percentage, this is kind of going back to the survey now, the respondents indicating they renewed their season tickets for the season was high. There was 97% of respondents saying that they had continued with their season tickets for the 2022-23 campaign. That said, 42% were critical of the pricing, and 62% were unhappy with having to pay for their season ticket by the 29th of April, when last season was still in progress. Now, the club's attempt to erode the principle of concession was very unpopular, with 70% of all respondents, and I'm right in saying 88% of over 65 disagreeing with the decision to withdraw young, adult and senior concession categories from cut pricing. And 83% of seniors agreeing that the concessions should be linked to the person, not the seat. Now, prior to the Champions League group stage draw, we are aware that, of course, the THST lobbied for the club to offer the option of a package of tickets for the 3 group stage games alongside the standard option of individual matches. This would have enabled the package to be offered at a discounted rate, saved fans money on individual transaction fees, and also enabled the club to get money for all the 3 games in earlier. So it would have been essentially a win-win. Now, the package option was very popular. I mean, that's how I went with last time when it was offered by the club. And when match goers, when it was last offered, has been supported consistently by numerous fans in the THST surveys. But the club, of course, did not accept to action that request. So I suppose, Steve, the question I'm keen to ask you is, what's your honest view on the ticketing prices for the season in general, and especially the Champions League prices, given we saw in that Marseille game, we hadn't seen a sellout at our opening home game with the Champions League against Marseille. And in the most politest way of putting it, when you look at Spurs' Champions League group stage group, I mean, again, they're all going to be very hard teams. Spurs have still got a job to do, but it does have more of a Europa League group feel to it than it does a Champions League group, in the most politest way I can put that across, Steve.
Sorry, I've lost the sound there, Ricky, from some of that.
I wouldn't blame you. I'd be deliberately trying to lose the sound from that. Steve, can you hear me now, Steve? Can you hear me now? No?
No. Shall I take that while Steve's getting back?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we'll try and let Steve sort out his mic, and we'll come to you, Rachel, if you're keen to answer that.
I mean, basically, we did lobby for group package. We also lobbied for them to be category C, and we, quoted prices that other London clubs that had managed to, or one London club that had managed to get into the Champions League were charging for theirs. And, our prices were out of kilter, and we very much wanted them to be category C, but that wasn't listened to. In actual fact, in the end, I think it was about 58,000, 57,000 maybe tickets sold, which isn't a sellout, and that's disappointing. but it wasn't as bad as it was first looking. I think the thing that we were really disappointed about was that we'd constantly been saying that you need to give ticket share. You need to open ticket share for people, because especially people who are on the automatic cut renewal, you don't know what the dates are going to be. It could be Tuesday or Wednesday. Things happen. You can't always come. We were being told, no, you can't share your ticket, but you can buy up to 4 more for guests. And those 4 can obviously be printed out, shared. The security of those tickets, is not as good as if you're sharing it with another person who's got a customer reference number.
Yeah.
But anyway, the good news is that they have opened it for the next 2 matches in the Champions League. So you can share your tickets on Ticket Share. It is there in the comms. It's just a little bit hard to find.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it? Like, when you talk about the security side of things and like kind of printing out tickets and being able to share it with anyone, that's been an issue around being able to pass your ticket on for a Champions League. Like you just said, if the fixture changes, that's one of the things with the TV fixtures as well. Like in the Premier League, if your TV fixtures if your fixture changes because of the TV rights, all of a sudden you can't go to a certain match, or you need to adjust. It needs to be similar for the Champions League as well, in my opinion. So it's good that they've started to look at that. Sorry, Rachel, go on.
No, I was going to say the other problem with that is that with the passing the tickets on is that on some of the Premier League games, you do that, then you find they move it yet again. So some of the matches are being moved twice, and yes, you could have gone. I think that happened with the North London derby actually, that people had passed their of course, because of the COVID, in inverted commas, and then people who could have gone couldn't go. And it's just it's not okay.
And I think the other thing on that as well, and I'll talk about the broadcasters in a second, but it's also fans that come far and wide. I think we also need to be able to appreciate that. Well, we have a huge American audience or audience of viewers and listeners from
Scandinavia.
The US. Yeah, Scandinavia, of course, all of the supporters trust around, as you just touched upon, Norway and Sweden and obviously India and everywhere, so far and wide, Thailand supporters clubs.
South Korea,
of course, how can we forget? So, it's people coming in from them destinations, for example, and then not being able to go to the match or pass their ticket on or be able to get hold of a ticket genuinely because of them changes that have happened. And I think that comes on to, I suppose, my next point, if I can bring you in, Steve. The broadcasters, they fared very badly, with 72% of UK respondents saying consideration of match-going fans has totally got worse since 2021-22 season. Some 41% of the UK-based fans said they had been unable to attend a game they had their tickets for because the kickoff time had been moved. That's exactly what we were just talking about. And for many overseas-based fans reporting the same thing as well, which we just touched upon. Our survey found 74% of UK-based fans and 69% of overseas fans were left out of pocket as a result. And when you factor in the cost of going to a game is not just 65 quid per se for a ticket, depending on where you're sitting in the stadium. It's everything else that goes into it: hotels, train fares, plane fares, bus fares, whatever it might be. So they are left out of pocket. The survey also found Monday and Friday night slots were the least popular of the current broadcast slots of all match-going fans. So, Steve, coming back over to you, do you feel more focus needs to be on the broadcasters here, not just obviously the clubs, but the broadcasters, to make the viewing experience better for match day supporters? I mean, obviously we're Spurs fans, but I remember last season we played Burnley at home, so it was all right for us because we're Spurs, but they had to get all the way down to Tottenham on a Sunday for a 12 o'clock kickoff. I mean, that's madness, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah, no, I agree, absolutely. Yeah, and apologies for losing the sound there and dropping out. And I think the point was made about fans being taken for granted. And I know you were covering the point about the ticket prices for Champions League games. But I mean, to come on to the point about broadcasting, yeah, absolutely. I don't think anyone likes Friday night, Monday night games. I don't think people particularly like lunchtime games either, actually. Of the televised slots, I mean, people, would obviously prefer a 3 o'clock on a Saturday kickoff, but 5:30 on a Saturday was the least unpopular, and that was quite clear in the results of the survey. But the problem is the timing of games and the moving of games. And you've all made the point that, let's face it, it's a long time. Well, if it ever was the case that people sort of walk out their front door somewhere in the London borough of Haringey to walk to the game, and that's 90% of the crowd. I mean, people, home fans are coming from all over the UK. I've got a mate who comes down from the Highlands of Scotland for games, as well as people travelling from overseas, and they make considerable commitments to get there, financial and practical, and then to find those games are moved around and changed at short notice is really problematic. And last season in particular, there were deadlines for when the Premier League was supposed to be telling fans which TV games have been picked and when they were going to be. And I think they missed every single one. Actually, this season, they've been a bit better at hitting the deadlines. But then you've got the point that Rachel and others have made, that games get moved for TV, and people, I know they're told not to, but people understandably assume, well, that's the date and time of the fixture. And then, like our game against Newcastle in a couple of weeks' time, they get moved again. And people have made arrangements to come down for that particular game. They've made travel arrangements, or they've made arrangements for that Sunday, which mean they now can't go to the game. And then they've got all the problems that go with that, as well as the point that Rachel makes around people who couldn't make a game originally and have sold their ticket on Ticket Exchange, and then they could go to a rearranged game and they can't get their ticket back. So no, it is just a disregard for fans. Now, obviously, the fixtures are picked by the broadcasters, not by the clubs. But that's to do with the deal the clubs have got into and the Premier League got into with the broadcasters, but they seem to give themselves no power whatsoever. And you compare it with other leagues, and you quite often get, don't you, managers in the Premier League complaining that if you look at Champions League fixtures, the teams competing from Spain and other countries have been helped out by their broadcasters as to when the game is going to be. So the clubs and the Premier League have an awful lot of power. They're the ones who own, the dreadful word, the products. They wouldn't be there without the clubs and the players and so forth, and us, the fans. And they have more clout than they seem to be giving themselves credit for as to this. It should not be the case that games are moved at such short notice. It should not be the case that they are moved more than once. Fans need to be brought into consideration. When there's a renegotiation of the Premier League TV rights, there should be much more say to clubs and fans as to what happens. They should look at transport costs and transport distances and people's ability to get back from games. I mean, scheduling that Liverpool game last season, at that time on a Saturday night, there's absolutely no way of getting back from that fixture if you were going back to London. And that's true of a number of other fixtures as well. I know the club lays on travel. I think there's a problem. There will be a problem getting back from Forest in the League Cup, and they're laying on stuff for that. But that's not the solution. People should take this into consideration. And I think the other point we are lobbying on is for train companies and the rail delivery group to make sure there is flexible ticketing, because people want to be able to book their tickets in advance. Yeah. And if games are shifted, that people can either shift their tickets or get a refund, and that should happen as a matter of course. And again, the Premier League and the clubs have a lot of clout on that, and should be working better if we had an integrated and nationalised rail network. But that's a different podcast probably. But certainly we should be working with the rail companies to make sure that people can get their money back and can get to games.
100%. And I think that again is another massive point about not being able to claw everything else back. You've just got sunken costs on, you mentioned about people coming far and wide from the Highlands and stuff. But I live in Oxfordshire, right? So it takes 2 hours to get to the stadium and 2 hours back. And that's the reality. So, if I go and have a couple of cheeky beavers in Beavertown, a couple of cheeky beers in Beavertown or whatever, and I'm getting public transport, if I'm driving, it's still virtually the same with traffic. It's a 2 hour piece. So to be able to, pre-book trains or pre-book hotels and all that type of stuff, that is something that needs to be considered. Now, obviously, coming on to sticking with you, if I can, Steve, coming on to a kind of match day experience in the survey results. Just before I go into that, typically the match day experience is actually is being really good in terms of people there. And I just wonder, again, this is me speculating, this is just my opinion, so forgive me, but around the TV rights and the scheduling, Is it because we want to sell our tickets first, make sure that we've got them sold in case people go, oh, it's on the telly, and actually I don't fancy going? Because honestly, that's not going to happen, because the atmosphere and the match day experience is very, very good at Tottenham now. People actually want to go and watch the games live, don't they? So for me, I think that does need some reform for sure. But Steve, sorry, actually coming over to you, Rachel, if I can. So match day experience at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is very positive. Over 70% of the UK respondents who attended a home game last season were very happy with the safety, with the security, with policing side of things as well. 2/3 saying they regularly eat and drink inside the stadium before games. I've got to say, just again, from a personal perspective, season ticket holder myself, as most of you know, that's something that we never did. Me and the group of guys that we go with, Nick and Coles and Steph and Crouchy and the boys, we always ate outside the stadium. We always, had a few beers or whatever outside of the stadium. Obviously now, technically it's outside the stadium with Beavertown Corner Pin, but it's still, all of us now are there. So there's some really positive numbers on the quality of what was being offered, but the survey also revealed a growing number of concerns about a drop in quality of products and the service, the upward movement in pricing, for example. We've also been working hard with both THST flags and Spurs song sheets, which, by the way, just quickly digressing, an album should have dropped 14 minutes ago now from Spurs song sheet and Tim Winstone. So make sure you check that out at Spurs song sheets at Tim Winstone as well. But we've worked alongside them, haven't we, Rick, to generate that atmosphere. Do you think that we're seeing this come to fruition now, Rachel, given our strong home form, winning every game? I don't know if we should be saying that bit, Rick, but look, we are winning every game at the moment at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It's one of our longest home winning streaks that we've had for a long, long time. So, Rachel, do you think that all of them things are coming together now?
Well, I'm not sure that we can put down our home results down to the new sausage rolls, but it is all.
Don't worry about
the
that.
solo chips.
But there is a feeling, isn't there, of it all coming together. If I go with the catering first, there was a bit of a drop off at the end of last season, and we had a meeting with the executive chef, actually, Mark Reynolds, during the close season, and we walked in and he showed us. There was this display of dishes and items that he was going to be offering, and I actually thought, have we really come all this way to have a look at the hospitality? Because the hospitality suite and what they were offering to the premium people, because this is not our remit. This is obviously we care about it, but it's not our real remit is for general admission. And no, this was all general admission food that he was showing us, and it was pretty phenomenal, I have to say. And the pride that we had, the brigade that had been preparing it, the pride that they all showed, and that they all understood their role in making the club a success, and getting, that actually by providing really good food, they were generating income, happy supporters, and helping the team to win the league. They really actually understood how their role fitted in, and I was really impressed with that. Since the season started, though, without doubt, there are problems about service, and the catering surveys that we do, this really has been highlighted. And we've got a meeting, actually, Simon and I from the board. We're meeting the club on Friday morning. We're going to be going through all the feedback that we've got, and it's really great that people have given very specific information about which particular places at which times. The club say that they're still selling the same amount. The figures are not, it's not being reflected in the finances. It may well not be, but if everybody was being served, the figures would be going up, because we all know people are giving up, and or you wouldn't bother getting a drink at half time because you can't get one in certain places. But generally, I find them very, very receptive. And, apart from they haven't responded to my request for smoked salmon bagels to be brought back. But other than that, they've been pretty amazing. There's still work to do on the speed of service. And we know that the service industries generally in England are finding it very tough at the moment. But there's no reason to not keep trying to get it better. We're really glad they've opened up the Park Lane Square every match now. It's much better having those outlets, and the different food outlets. The coffee out there is much more sort of artisanal.
I thought it was an excellent idea, Rachel. Sorry to cut across you, but
no, not at all.
Huge makes a huge difference going in the back of that south stand now. Having that area outside, it just kind of spreads things out a little bit more as well, doesn't it? And gives you a little bit more freedom of choice.
Yeah, totally. And then in terms of Spurs song sheets and THFC flags, we at the Trust have always felt that it's so much better if things are genuine fan-led initiatives, rather than something being put down on us by the club or the Trust, who we don't have the capacity to be trying to organise match day events like that. But we really worked with those organisations and put them in touch with the right people, gave them advice on funding and the sort of things involved, and obviously retweet like mad when they're putting their bids out for volunteers. But it's quite a thing to see how much organisation needs to go into something like the flags, for example. How many people you need, all the decisions around design, how big do they need to be, where are they stored, who's going to be standing in the crowd rather than in the bar, for 3/4 of an hour before the match, who's going to miss some of the game by having to take them down to be stored again. There's a lot going on, but we think they've done brilliantly. And as for Tim, and really, really well done to THFC flags. And as for Tim Winston and the Spurs song sheets,
he's a legend, that guy. Absolute
he's
legend.
Amazing.
What a good singer he is. I must say, Tim as well. I know Tim's a regular watcher, viewer, listener. He's got an unbelievable voice. Voice. Superb voice. Honestly.
And we were lucky to have him. He came down for our end of season barbecue and was singing, all the songs. It was absolutely brilliant. And all through the close season, I've been having the Kulisevsky song, the Bentancur song going on round and round in my head. They're absolute earworms. I can't lose them. But I love it that the songs are being created by fans, and it's sort of mixing it up a bit. And the Richarlison song, love it. Yeah, I'm really, really full of admiration for them. And of course, we also did the mural of Ledley King by bringing people together. And we didn't paint it. We got other people to, but it's about introducing people and making things easier.
Yeah, for sure. He looks good. He looks fine. Yeah, the one.
He's going to be on my mind the whole time now.
And he's still scoring. Even when he's away from us, he's still scoring, which is great. He is indeed. Sticking actually over, we're going to move over to Steve now. Steve, we know that THST previously mentioned that you've been in discussion with the club about a new framework to give fans a voice at board level. Now, this comes in the wake of the recommendations in the fan-led review of football governance and of the club's commitment after the collapse of the ESL breakaway attempt to establish fan representation on the club board. Now, I'm conscious that, it's obviously been quite a long process, this, in terms of trying to get somebody of some nature onto the board. Are you able to give us an update as to where that stands at the moment, Steve, and the long list of things that you and Rachel are heading up at the moment?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for that, Ricky. And I should say, I've also got an unbelievable voice, but not in a good way. So I won't get you to that. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think, first of all, again, I pay tribute here to Cat and Martin, the work they've done over many years with the club on governance, but also with the Football Supporters Association. And look, this was prompted by the then Prime Minister's response to the European Super League. Our test for this, as we said from the very outset, was whatever is put in place must be something that means a European Super League could never happen, and that fans must be consulted at the key stage of every process, which is another way, of course, of guaranteeing that such a thing wouldn't happen. Now, we were involved in giving evidence to Tracy Crouch and her review, submitting evidence. We've been involved in working with other groups, other fan trusts, other Football Supporters Association who've been great on this as well. And we've had a number of discussions with the club around the establishment of what is now likely to be called a fan advisory board. As Rachel said earlier, we've been very pleased to work very closely with Proud Lily Whites, with Spurs Reach, and with Spurs Ability. And, you know, our interests here coincide, and it's important that we do work together with other fan groups, and we are a collective on this. There's not any suggestion of, you know, disunity or divide and conquer and so forth. We're all working together and learning from each other on this. So as Rachel said earlier, we have made some good progress. We've had some quite detailed discussions with the club. I mean, this is important stuff, I think, because it just feeds into, you know, those future decisions. We've come quite a long way. We've made quite a lot of progress. We received, we met the club over the summer with the other groups, and we suggested some improvements that we thought could be made to the draft documentation that we've seen. Only this weekend, we received the further revisions from the club, picking up on some of those points and making some further changes. We've all been reviewing those documents today and over the weekend, and we'll be discussing it with our colleagues on the trust board and with the other groups before responding to the club. So we can't say much more. It would be wrong of me to say more on that before we've had the opportunity to talk with colleagues and talk with the other groups and go back to the club. But certainly progress is being made. There are areas still to be discussed, but we're really engaging on this and hopeful of achieving an outcome. I think the other thing to say, you will have read, I'm sure, some of the stuff in the press in the last week that the new Prime Minister seems less keen on regulating anything, but including on implementing the fan-led review and on the independent regulator and the golden share and so forth. There's rather a lot of worrying concerns about that. Now, we're working with other supporters trusts and with the FSA to put our penneth into the government and say, hang on a minute, this needs to be implemented in full. Apart from being the right thing to do, it's immensely popular with football fans and others. And this is another area where the survey, I think, is very important. And we can point to the fact that statistically, Spurs supporters want an independent regulator, want a bigger say in what's going on in the club, and want to make sure there's a golden share so that, you know, stadiums can't be moved and colours can't be changed and competitions can't be changed and so forth. So a lot still to be done, but an awful lot of work has gone into this. And, you know, we were going to carry on trying to push that over the line.
No, I appreciate that, Stephen. I think, again, it's just one of those topics where it was never going to be something that was ever going to be implemented overnight. It was always going to be almost a gradual process of trying to get closer and closer to where we want to be. But I think the most important thing is that, look, it's still moving in the right direction to some degree. And fingers crossed we get an outcome where everybody feels it benefits everybody in that chain. And it's not just for Spurs fans. That's across the wider community of all football clubs around the country. And fingers crossed, I think we all agree that there doesn't need to be somebody there accountable, so we never see something like that ESL ever rear its head again. I mean, we're already seeing suggestions of different formations about how this kind of thing can happen in the future. I just think we need to ensure that that cannot happen again. And I'll hand over to Lee.
Yeah, for sure. So, Rachel, I suppose this is coming over to you. Regular readers of THST News will recall that representatives of the Trust Board liaised closely with Tottenham Hotspur Women's Supporters Group to share the experience, the knowledge and watch-outs from the men's game, and to be better integrated with the women's game into the mainstream fan experience, which obviously we've just seen. You know, the result wasn't brilliant, was it? Let's be honest, for our ladies yesterday, but you know, to have a record attendance at the Emirates, I think it's 53,000 people, is absolutely phenomenal. At the time, it was Katrina and Athilia were pleased to attend a meeting with representatives of the women's group, Proud Lily White, Spurs Ability, Spurs Reach, we talked about before, and the club, all via Zoom on the 21st of July. Rachel, how proud of you to see our women's team and women's game grow in general from strength to strength? It's been pretty phenomenal rise, isn't it, when you look into what happened with the Euros as well as just from the Tottenham side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I think it must have been about 4 years ago, the Trust sponsored a match of the Spurs women, and we went over to Cheshunt, which I hadn't been to since the days when I used to hang around the training ground watching Martin Chivers. Steve Perriman, actually, and John Pratt were my favourites. But anyway, won't go into that. And Pete Hayne, who was on the board, and I had the privilege of choosing the player of the match. and we presented the trophy to Ash Neville on the pitch, and we were clearly quite astute in our choice because she's gone on, you know, from strength to strength. She's an absolutely amazing defender. And to watch the sort of size of crowds from when we were there 4 years ago, and also the fact that, you know, the promotion they've had, and, you know, it's just unbelievable the progress that's been made, and it's such a great thing. It's so good for girls to see, you know, to have that sort of aspiration, and that they can. This is a game for us as well, that we can play as well as watch. We can watch the men's game, we can watch the women's, but we can play football. Because certainly when I was young, you actually literally were not allowed to play football. We could, I believe it or not, was in the netball team, but, you know, we weren't allowed to join the boys or play football at all. I went to the Euros. I went to 4 matches in London, and it was just the most heartwarming experience. I think there was so much that we can learn from the way it was marketed, the way the crowd was groups of men, groups of women, men with children, women with children, you know, mixed groups, people who were openly, you know, same gender, holding hands. It was just absolutely lovely, the whole thing. And of course, the pricing was right. The tickets were really, really affordable. So a family could go and pay 30 quid, you know, for all of them to go and watch the game. This is the Euros. And then, of course, with the Lionesses doing so well and then winning, I just think it's given a huge impetus to the women's game, and it's a fantastic thing. And it looks like it's going to be built on, which is wonderful, because obviously the problem with the 2012 Olympics was those were halcyon days, but what's happened since then?
Yeah, no, for sure. And actually, I think it was only in 2019 that the record attendance for a WSL game at Brighton, I might be wrong, it was just under 5,000. I think it was 3,900. I think something like that. And then obviously we had the record attendance at Tottenham last season, which was 38,000. And of course, that's just been beaten at the Emirates this weekend as well. It's really lovely to hear you talk like that as well. I've got 3 daughters. I mentioned it already today on the podcast. I've got 3 daughters. And a quick funny story. Well, not so funny, but I think it's the times that we live in. One of my twins, Lois, she come home from school the other day and she went, Daddy, guess what? She's 9, by the way. She says, we played football today. And like Lois doesn't like football. She thinks it's too loud and too whatever. She went, and guess what? I said, what's that, Lois? She went, with boys. And I was like, whoa, that's amazing. So, you know, she's coming home from school and having that mixed sport with boys and girls playing football at the same time, and not at a high level, of course. Like she's, you know, it was in games, but the reality is doing it, and that's the most important thing. That actually they've got accessibility to be able to go and do that sort of stuff as well, which is brilliant. It's also, you know, worth at this point to remind our viewers and listeners that THST Forum is open to full and life members of the trust. So full and life members can apply to join through the link on the THST website and set yourself up an account. Rachel, I suppose, is there any other ways our viewers and listeners can join and help support the trust?
Certainly, yes. Anyone can join, whether you live overseas or here. We really value having a huge membership, because obviously the more people that we've got in our membership, the more valid our voice is. And we know that we're getting the opinions of, you know, a diverse range of supporters with different needs. So, you know, while obviously most of the work we're doing is with that affects match going fans, we want to have supporters from all around the world. It's lovely, actually. We get a busy mailbag, and we often get emails from people saying, you know, I'm from Colorado, I've been a member for ages, we're finally getting over to London. So they might be asking, you know, how do we get tickets? But also, how do we, you know, we don't know anybody. Is there any chance of meeting up with people, or, you know, what's going on? What's the best places to do? Any recommendations? And because we've got the forum, we can put those on there, and other people can join in. And very often people say, oh, you know, come and say hello, etc., etc. So, yeah, Steve, did you want to add in there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we want as much participation as possible, as big a membership as possible, and people participating in events. So to join the trust is very easy. You go on the website, there's a button to say join here on the website. You can join as an associate member, which doesn't cost you anything, but we'd encourage people to join as full members for £10 or concessionary members for £5. And then you get full participation in all of the trust activities, including elections and the annual general meeting, which happens every February. It's been online for the last few years, but it's a very good opportunity for people to ask questions of us, but also to participate and to get more involved in the trust. Because as Rachel says, the more people who are involved, the more we can reflect their views and their opinions and take that on board and make sure we're representing people effectively. And we do, obviously during the pandemic, we weren't all able to organise events the way that we wanted, but Rachel mentioned earlier on about the barbecue, which was very successful in the summer. We had Steve Perryman there. We had a fantastic quiz again at the Antwerp Arms. Give a big shout out to the Antwerp Arms. What a fantastic pub. We had a quiz there, and I don't know how this happened, but the club's team, captained by Ledley King, managed to win the quiz, and lifted the trophy with all the jokes and that you might imagine went with that. That was a fantastic night. And we will be organising some more events and encouraging people to come along to that as well. But please do join. Please do have your say. And if you've got an issue that you want to raise with the trust, the info email address that Rachel gave you earlier on, do get in touch with us as well. And you're now that have you seen us in glorious Technicolor, you'll probably see us around the stadium as well, so do come and say hello.
That's one of the things, Steve and Rachel, that you'll get a lot of people coming up and saying hello, and it is pretty amazing. I remember bumping into Kat and Martin so many times after meeting them firstly through the show, and then actually seeing them quite often in the end. It was like we're magnetised. It was fantastic. Have a drink and say hello and chat. And I just echo that as well. From an independent perspective, I don't nothing to do with the THST at all. But if you've got some really strong opinions, then get involved, become a full member, because that's where you're gonna really reap the benefits. Don't just come on social media, have a little pop at the trust or whatever it might be, and then not be a member. Come and be a full member. Put your name down and get involved. Definitely.
Couldn't have put it better myself. Well done, Lee.
Honestly, guys, well, listen, I must say thank you so much. We're an hour and a half in, and Steve said to me off air, how long do these shows normally last for? And we did say to Steve, roughly about an hour. It's never an hour last one of Spurs. So, Steve and Rachel, thank you ever so much. I mean, we're conscious that we've got, in terms of football to come now, Spurs running until November, until we break for, obviously, of course, the World Cup. So, fingers crossed during that break. It'd be great to have you back on to see what progress has been made across the ball. But I must just say, look, it's been a number of months since we've had anyone on from THST. So thank you so much for bringing us really up to date. It's been an absolute pleasure having you both on. And I suppose if anyone wants to find you across social media, Rachel, Steve, are you keen for us to find you across social media? Out of interest, Rachel?
Yes.
I really threw you in there, didn't I? Are you keen? Oh, maybe not.
I mean, I'm not seeking to have thousands of followers. If you want to follow me, you're very, very welcome, and I'm sure I'll follow you back. But I'm not.
What I would say,
I am quite shy as well.
Oh, bless you.
Keep an eye out for obviously our official Twitter account. We put a lot of stuff out.
Yes, absolutely, that's the one.
Including our newsletters. There's a monthly newsletter. There'll be one coming out. I think it'll be next week now for. The start of October, where we do try and update people, but we do put stuff out regularly as well if there's a particular development around a particular issue. So do keep an eye out for that, as well as participating in the forum as well. So and have a look on the website.
And I must just ask you guys, I know again time-wise, very quickly in terms of the season, we don't have a chance to ask you. Rachel, let's start with you. We'll close it on this. Rachel, happy with Spurs' start to the season so far?
I'm very happy with our second half performances. I think we're really good. Second half.
Isn't that a political answer? What a good answer.
And I'm very happy that Sonny's back. And I mean, it was never away, but I just adore Sonny. And so if Sonny's smiling, I'm smiling.
There you go. And Paddy says to you, Rachel, you tweet a lot of your paintings. She's a born Picasso. What a compliment that is. What a lovely compliment that is.
Thank you, Paddy.
Honestly. Steve, any thoughts for you? Start of the season, conscious that we're still in September and it's Spurs. Thoughts so far?
Absolutely. No, very pleased indeed. I mean, I like Rachel. I mean, what an explosion of joy when Sonny got that first hat trick on Saturday. And let's face it, it wasn't exactly a tap in, was it? I mean, from the angle I sit at, just seeing that go in, and then the left foot one up, just absolutely magnificent. Yeah, very pleased. I think they've shown great resilience. There's been some really fantastic passages of football as well. There's some tremendous football. It's funny, isn't it? I wouldn't have thought before the season started. I thought, why do we need Richarlison? Well, we obviously did need Richarlison, but I just hadn't really seen it before. And the difference that makes as well, I think, is fantastic. I mean, yeah, look, I was listening to your programme after the Lisbon game. It's nothing like torturing yourself after a defeat. And I agree with the analysis. And I was also thinking, well, exactly. You're thinking, hang on, not as you made this point in the programme. Not only was it not working with Emerson Royal down the right wing, he was on a yellow card. And Højbjerg and Bentancur were on yellow cards, and yet no substitutions were made. You're thinking, oh God, what's going on? But then on Saturday, I said at half time to my son, oh God, Bentancur's having a poor game, isn't he? And of course, within 5 minutes, he's scored, and then he's made the next one. So just as well that I don't make any decisions relating to stuff on the pitch. But I'm very pleased. I think I think there's a character to the team. There's a togetherness to the team. They seem to respond really positively to each other. I mean, the way Eric Dyer has just got back to superb form. I think very, very positive. Let's hope we get a fantastic result on Saturday lunchtime, and then we can all feel very positive. I mean, you make the point about the international break. This is again slightly digressing, but I mean, how absurd! There should never be a World Cup in Qatar. Human rights abuses, workers dying building stadia. Also, they bid to hold a World Cup in the summer, and now it's in the winter in the middle of the season. It should never be allowed, and that's going to make it a very odd season. I think it's going to make it a very odd season. But let's hope we keep that momentum going and carry on enjoying it, and let's carry on with this home run as well, which is fantastic.
Yeah, Greg says, Steve, can we have a Conte we trust?
In Conte we trust.
There you go. There you go.
I won't do my Antonio song because you really wouldn't want to hear that. But,
Ricky, before we close out, just if I may, we talk about the home run, which is going really, really well, of course. And I know our away record at the Emirates, which obviously is, I know it's not a preview show, but it is absolutely abysmal in the Premier League. But when you take into consideration, we're also on a fantastic run away from home. We haven't lost an away Premier League game since March the 12th. So, that is a long time. I know there's been a break in the season since then, but, it's also a long, we're going into that game in very, very good shape. As are Arsenal. And this is what I was trying to say earlier. The reality is that these are the games that you want to be in. It's probably the worst fixture, that and Stamford Bridge away. Stamford Bridge and Emirates is probably the two horrendous fixtures that you look for. But imagine coming away with, I'll be honest with you, I'll take a point right now, but imagine coming away with a win. What is that going to... If we win at Emirates, we're going to be thinking we're winning the league. Don't worry about that. Yeah. Most people will be. Even Anthony Costa will be.
I was there that game in 2010 where we came back from 2-0 down to win 3-2. I was there. I'm afraid to say I went with an Arsenal mate, and I was in the Arsenal section. So I had to I did the quietest celebration of fists in the air.
How did you control yourself, Steve? I've never known how you controlled yourself.
I've got no idea what it got you, but then of course I think it was the next season, but it was into 2012. I was there in a similar circumstances where we went 2-0 up and lost 5-2. So I prefer not to think about that.
I remember there's been so many bad fixtures, isn't there? Do you remember when we lost 3-0? Fabregas ran from the from kickoff when it first halfway line, bang, scored. I think scored 2 that day. I think the last omen that I've got for me, I'm hoping it's a bit of a good luck omen. I went with my man Nick Martin. We went to the Emirates and we drew 1-1. I think Moussa Dembele won a penalty. Do you remember that game? And then Kevin Wimmer scored an own goal and it was 1-1. I'll take that right now, 1-1. I will take that and then move on because it'd be very interesting to see.
Let's just go back to May at our place and that atmosphere and that game there when we absolutely stuffed them, and that was what a great night that was.
It was. Indeed. Do you know what, Steve? As well, off the back of that that's what we mentally done them. What did Gary Neville say, Rick?
Yes.
We beasted them or something.
Terrorised that fan base. That's it. Terrorised.
We got in the head that day, and I think that's what got us ultimately top 4.
Yeah.
My only worry is that they're going to make that atmosphere for them because they believe and fair play. It's so hard to say this because it's Arsenal and a lot of viewers and listeners will hate me saying it, but fair play to them. They're doing well. They are doing well at the top of the league. What I would say, in point that you made, Steve, about it being a weird season with a World Cup. But by this point, if we get out there with a point at least, we'd have played Arsenal away, West Ham away, and Chelsea away, which are probably our worst away fixtures.
Yeah, true.
And we've already got through them all and lost. So, please do not lose Spurs on this weekend coming. Do not do it. We've got it in our locker. We can win. And with some firing, we can go and get all 3 points, let alone taking a draw. But I will snap your arm off for a draw right now.
Yeah, so.
Amen. We've got a massive preview show to bring you on Wednesday night. A very special guest. We're looking forward to that. But I must say, Rachel, Steve, thank you so much for all your time. Really, really appreciate it. We're looking forward to welcoming you guys back, like I say, towards November time. And massively enjoyed it. I'm sure Lee, your echo thoughts. Lovely to have Rachel and Steve on. Looking forward to many more to come.
Absolutely brilliant, and again, like you just said, many more to come. And next time we're in the stadium together, which will probably be our next home game, we'll be sure to come and say hello and have a couple of cheeky laser crushes over in Babytown.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you both. Really enjoyed it.
It's been fun. Thank you for having us.
Lovely. Well, listen, from Rachel, from Steve, from Lee, myself, guys, as always, please keep safe, keep well. We're back with you on Wednesday, and as always, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.